So seeing as we've already made a pesto earlier on in week 1, I think it was, or week 2, we are going to swap it up a little bit, as I said in the last section, and we're going to use not just pine nuts, but we've swapped half the pine nuts for some pistachios. And then you could maybe take out a quarter, a fourth of the basil and swap that for spinach, which makes the whole thing a little bit more creamy as well. So, nice and simple. And actually, whenever I'm making pesto for myself, I usually just, if I'm making a recipe, I make a little bit extra because it always gets used. And I'm just going to quickly chop the garlic, or obviously you could do that in the garlic press if you wanted to. Lemon, of course, and olive oil. And again, if you wanted to swap out a little bit of the olive oil with maybe some pumpkin seed oil or some flax oil, hemp oil. Okay, so that's looking like it's a good consistency now. It seems we're very early on in the course. You know, I always like to talk about if you can start to make dishes without measuring everything out. It's really going to help. And pesto is one of those things that you can really practice on. So rather than just measure everything out, just do whatever you think is, you know, a pinch, or whatever you think is a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon. I usually just keep my salt in a dish like that on the side whenever I'm working, and I just kind of throw it in and then do it by taste. So I'll just give this another quick whiz, wanting to keep a lot of that texture still. And then, you know, I just like to have some tasting spoons down the side here ready. And then if that tastes, if I'm making food for other people, obviously you don't want to double dip, so I've already put that end in, so I'm just going to use the other end to have a second taste, just to make sure. Perfect. Right, first time. Okay, so that's nice and salty, or just the right amount of saltiness. Let's put these down to one side. And then, you know, at that point you can also check for oiliness, and make sure there's enough lemon juice and enough of everything in there. You know, there's so many different ways to make pesto. Make sure there's enough garlic for you. But once you get the confidence to not measure everything out, it makes everything so much quicker. Okay. So there's our pesto. Again, we'll put that in the fridge. We've got one more layer to make, which is the tomato sauce. So we'll do that and then we can start plating this up. The next layer and the final layer is our tomato sauce. So we're going to have a base of sun-dried tomatoes. Again, they've been soaked, fresh tomatoes. And we're going to sweeten up with a date. Or you can use any of your favourite sweeteners. A little bit of garlic, some dried oregano. You could also add some onion to this if you wanted, some fresh basil. We've also got some olive oil and some lemon juice here. So because there's quite a few layers to this, you know, when you look at this recipe, sometimes it can look as if it's a big job. So that's why, you know, as I said there, if you wanted to add some onion, I left the onion and the basil, a couple of ingredients, out on this occasion because we've already got the pesto, so the flavour is going to be there, and I don't want this recipe to look so daunting that you don't try it. So get the basic recipe down first. And as you can see, it really is, it's easy, and it definitely, your mind can fool you into thinking that there's more to it than there is. And once you've got that basic recipe down, then you can start to experiment and add a few more ingredients. So pretty important here that we do kind of roughly chop these, because they are the most difficult thing for the food processor to break down. And sometimes people ask me, when do I use a food processor and when do I use a blender like a Vitamix? And the answer would be, a lot of the time you could use either. Like, you know, I've made pesto in a food processor just these last couple of times, but you can also, I've definitely made it in a Vitamix before as well. Generally though, a food processor is going to leave you with more texture, and the blender like a Vitamix is going to be used for more kind of liquid things. So, but this the reason that I thought of that was that this tomato sauce you could do in either. So, but again, you know, for this dish I want to leave it chunky. Fresh tomato, de-seeded, and I just wanted to leave one whole so we could show you how to de-seed that. It's nice and simple. Oh, just going to chop the top off there. Then you want to do that into quarters, and it's almost kind of like you fillet the tomato. And of course you can juice those middle pieces, and you don't have to be too meticulous. Like if you've got a couple of seeds there, it's not too much to worry about. Now the reason we want to do this is if you leave the seeds in there, this is going to be very watery, and you'll get away with it the way that we're going to plate this. But if you are making one big lasagna in a lasagna dish, like I mentioned, you're going to find that if you have too many watery layers, when you take that first, imagine you've got your lasagna in a dish, you take that first portion out and you lift it out, it's like lifting it out of just a pool of water. So you have to make each layer as dry as possible, but still obviously enough water to have it blend. Okay, then the dates, obviously we've taken the pits out of those, and I think I'll just give those a little bit of a rough chop as well. Same with the garlic. In we go with that. The dried oregano. Got our oil to bring everything together flavour-wise, and the lemon juice. And again, we've got no salt in there because there's plenty of salt in the other layers, and it's very easy to actually make this too salty. If you put salt in every layer, it's going to be an issue. Okay, so you can see even the food processor has got this, you know, nicely broken down, but it's still got that kind of chunkiness to it, which is great. Great for mouthfeel, and great for the dish as a whole. So I'm just going to put this into this bowl and come back and join me in the next section where we're going to put this together and make it look fantastic. So we've got all our ingredients assembled here now, and you know, you've seen me make this. Just each thing only took a few minutes, but before you know it, you've got all these amazing ingredients, and any of these leftovers go great in a salad. You know, if you just get a bunch of salad leaves and put a little bit of olive oil and vinegar on, and then just kind of plop a lot of this kind of, especially the tomato sauce, you'll be left with a little bit of extra tomato sauce. Also works surprisingly well in a nori roll as well. But yeah, lasagna leftovers are my absolute favourite, and when we get further down in the course I'm going to be showing you a couple of different types of bread, so you'll be able to put some of these into sandwiches. It's amazing. So the first thing we're going to do, I've got some nice organic spinach here. Excuse me. And I'm just putting a little bit of Himalayan salt on there, and some olive oil. And we've talked about this with the kale. We know what this does. It just wilts it down. So we'll just give that a massage. And so we get all those leaves coated, and they start to break down a little bit, and they're not quite so springy, and they'll be easier to deal with. And then we're going to put these in each of the layers. It's always nice to, wherever you can, get a few extra greens into the equation. Like so. And as you'll see, I'll just kind of bring this over there, Dan. You can see this, it started to go like a darker green. The more you massage it, the darker it goes. Gorgeous. All right, So I'm just going to quickly wash my hand off, and then we'll start with 3 pieces of that zucchini or courgette. As you can see, I did a little bit extra here so we can feed the crew. It's important. And I've gone for a square plate just to kind of keep this symmetrical. If you notice, I'm just overlaying the 3 pieces there. Right, the square in the middle of a square plate. And then there's no real kind of correct order that you have to do these in necessarily. But I like to go, actually I think I change it each time, but I'm going to go with this time, I'm going to go with a little bit of the kind of the meat, portobello meat layer. And sometimes you may have seen a picture of another of my lasagnas where we've done an equal layer of each. But I also like to kind of have it a little bit more scattered around so it's not all even, so you get different varying flavours in each bite. So I'm going to go with the tomato sauce next. So again, I'm not just covering the whole thing, just kind of going round. As you can see, I'm using a different spoon for each one as I go along. And you also want to think about how this looks from the side as well. So when you look at that from the side, you know, you can see the different colours. So it's not just all everything mushed in together. Let's go with our cheese. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Maybe just a little bit extra on the side there. And then the pesto. The pesto is probably the most flavourful of all the layers. So you don't necessarily need as much, but did I mention that I like pesto? So I'm going to put a lot of pesto. I wish I'd invented pesto. Okay, and then I've got this nice ripe fresh tomato here. So we'll have some nice thin slices, and I think because of the size of the tomato I'm just going to go with 1 slice on there. A little bit of spinach on there as well, and just kind of let that fall down the sides a little bit. Okay, keep the plate clean as you go along, and then we'll take our next 3 strips. Now, whereas the last time I went that way along, this time I'm going to go that way with the strips. It just gives it a bit of extra stability. 3 again. And then I'm just gently going to push that down just a little bit. We don't want it all squishing out, but we do want to just kind of make it nice, a good solid base. So we'll build this up the same sequence. Tomatoes next. You know, by varying the direction of those zucchini strips, when you cut into it, it doesn't just all fall apart. Okay, and the great thing about this is that if you don't want to go too heavy on the nuts, you don't have to put too much of that macadamia cheese in. Everything else is pretty fresh. Obviously the pesto's got some pine nuts in and some pistachios. And pistachios actually tend to make the pesto a little bit kind of greener as well. They give it a nice bright green glisten. We're amongst friends here, so I'm licking my fingers. Okay, some of that. Then we'll do a little bit more of this. Okay, now I'm going to go down to the second layer. I could use these, I just want to make this one look really good for you so you can see the finished thing. So I'm going again the same as the first layer along this way. These can get out of hand, these lasagnas. You can get them, build them really too high. Okay, And then we could just put some tomato on the top. There's a couple of different things you can do. With this tomato looks a little bit too flimsy. I'll try it and you can kind of see what I'm going to do, or at least what I'm going to attempt to do. If it doesn't work with this one, then you can try with a tomato of your own. You just kind of cut down the middle there. I'm going to put a little bit of spinach on top as well. That's going to help hold this tomato up. Then you take your tomato. As I said, this one's a little bit flimsy, so we'll see. Yeah, there we go. That worked out. You could also put maybe a little sprig of basil on the top there, in addition to or instead of the spinach. Gives it a nice bit of height. If you've got yellow tomatoes, yellow heirloom tomatoes, or any other colour tomato, the zebra striped tomato looks really nice on top. Then what really finishes it off nicely is a little bit of this Italian seasoning. So this is just a blend of the Italian herbs, oregano, marjoram, thyme, basil, rosemary and sage. Just give that a little sprinkle on top, and then just let a couple of those fall on the plate as well. And then as far as plating is concerned, I like to keep the very edge of the plate here completely clear. And then I think we'll finish it off with just a little bit of olive oil, which you could drizzle on top. I'm just going to put my finger over that. It's already quite a small spout, but I'm going to put my finger over the edge so that it gives me a lot of control as to where this is going. I'm just going to drip a few dots of olive oil around the outside. And there we have our raw living lasagna.